Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the CCA Living Room. I'm Jason Silverman. I'm here at the CCA in the CCA studio. Hopefully, we'll all be back here together. This room misses you. Thanks for staying safe and keeping each other safe during this very strange moment. We're really grateful to have you here tonight. This is a program that I've been dreaming about since we started the Living Room series. A film that is kind of, each time I watched it, I think I've seen it 4 or 5 times now. Just kind of, it touches me, so it wrecks me a little bit. It touches me so deeply. That's Genius of Marion. We have the filmmakers Banker White and Anna Fitch with us. And I wasn't sure exactly what to do with it. And then I saw Cheryl St. Ong's incredible photos. They were on the cover of the New York Times Sunday magazine a few months ago. So I wrote her and invited her to join us for a conversation about art making during the decline of one's parents. It's a really powerful subject. I think a lot of you have had a chance to watch the film. Maybe some of you know the photographs. We're going to share some clips and some photos and have I think what's going to be a rich conversation. If you want to join the conversation, please click on the chat button, which if you have there's a little red ellipses on the right of your screen. If you click that, it opens and closes that little slide there. And you can see the chat. You can add to it. I would close it when you're looking at the movie clips and at the photos so you can get a bigger screen experience of those. And thank you for being here. We're really grateful to have you here. We have decided to make all of the Living Room programs free going forward, well, at least for the time being, or most of them. And we did that because I think there's a lot of people who will appreciate the content who might be struggling to afford to pay for these, and so they're going to be free going forward for the most part. If you would like to help support the Living Room and make a donation, you can do that. I'm going to post, this is something new here. I don't know what it looks like on your end, but there is a button now, donate now. If you click that, it's going to open in a new tab, and you don't have to touch it during the program, so you don't have to distract yourselves from the program. It'll be there when we close up, and you can make a donation to the CCA that will support the Living Room programming. And we appreciate you doing that and spreading the word about the Living Room. So without too much further ado, I'm going to introduce our panelists. Cheryl St. Ong is an incredible photographer, as you'll see. Her work's been published in the New Yorker, New York Times Magazine, as I said, Photograph Magazine, Time Magazine. She was named one of Time Magazine's top 50 photographers. She teaches at Phillips Exeter Academy. She's also been collected in the UNM Art Museum, which of course we know is a great repository for modern photography. And she focuses on the crossover of art and science, her photographs do. We're really grateful to have you here, Cheryl. And I'm going to close this so we can look at humans instead of me. And Banker White and Anna Fitch have made a series of wonderful films. Banker's works include the Sierra Leone's Refugee All-Stars, which we played at the CCA once upon a time. Survivors, which is an exploration of the Ebola pandemic. He's won awards at AFI Fest, about Full Frame Film Festival, Human Rights Film Watch Festival, South by Southwest, et cetera, et cetera. His work and Anna's work has been supported by the NEA, the MacArthur Foundation, the Tribeca Film Institute, and many more. Anna Fitch is an Emmy Award-winning director. She's created works that have been seen on PBS, BBC, the National Geographic Channel, and Channel 4. We're really grateful to have you guys all here.
Happy to be here.
Very great, thank you.
So we have, I'm not exactly sure where to get started because this is such a deep conversation to jump in, but maybe I'm going to start with Cheryl, and then we're going to show a clip from the film. Can you talk about the moment when you decided to start photographing your mom, and how you made that decision? Because for a time you didn't.
Yes. So I would say that it's extremely painful decision, and it wasn't one that I think unfolded in the ways that you might imagine. So I don't consider myself someone who really makes portraits. Um, I think as a older woman now, but went from high school to college to grad school to teaching, and making pictures of your children or your family seemed quaint, and maybe I avoided that, and I made other bodies of work that did not really focus on the idea of a portrait much at all. But of course, I have a beautiful family and lovely friends, and a very kind of rich life with a lot of people. So of course, portraits were made, but I wouldn't say that they were something that I felt felt comfortable doing, or felt that I had any interest in. And of course, my mother is like the greatest person on the planet, just the sweetest person, and just so well-adjusted human being. And so when this started to happen, I think both of us were pretty depressed. I mean, obviously me secondarily. I mean, her obviously just trying to cope with this and understand this. And I stopped making work because I had a project that had kind of naturally come to an end. And I got pretty depressed. And as many of you might also experience, we have a lot of friends who are artists, right? And we might really rely on their friendship and the support that they give us, both as feedback, but also just like somebody that you go make brownies with, or you go on a run with, or maybe you talk with. But they're also in that photo world with you, or filmmaking, or whatever it is that you make. And gradually over time, I started to imagine that these friends were possibly how long could this be sustained if I wasn't really making work and I wasn't contributing to their exchanges in that way. And I think that's a very interesting thing, where it's almost like as a child you start to think like, will they like me? How long can these friendships go on? And it was really a number of friends who, I think for a good year, when I would call them up and be very upset and crying, they would be like, well, you have to be making work. That would help. And I really thought that was unconscionable. And so two of them in particular, Joni Sternbach and Mary Ellen Barkley, both were like, well, gigs up, like, you got to make some pictures, or we're not going to share this. They were going to APAD, which is a really beautiful event. And I think I was very flippant by then, like, okay, I guess we'll just do this. And I turned to my mother, and I think much to both of our surprises, it was very fun. My mother just kind of lit up and sort of kind of took a deep breath, and you could see a side of her that I hadn't really seen. And of course, it's like a sport. Like once you start to play, you just let go, and it was very fun. And of course, I have an ego, so I shared the work, and I think so many people that probably were very kind and had been very supportive of my other work, and just of me as a person, were like, thank God. And of course, it just kind of snowballed. And I also.
Your mother has vascular dementia, is that correct?
She does, which I realize is so different than, vascular dementia, from what I understand, is one of these sort of garden salad type ideas, like where it could be anything. Like it manifests it a certain way with her, but it may manifest itself very differently with other people. So we are very grateful, and it's been very much easier. And I understand that this project really couldn't have happened for some people that had a parent like this. It was a really unique situation. My mother's extremely physically fit and very mobile and very willing and very happy. And that isn't always the case as their personalities change.
Okay. And we're going to come back to the conversation about what happened when you started doing it, and how it, what happened creatively and what happened in terms of your relationship with your mother, which is fascinating. So I'm going to ask the same kind of question to you guys. I mean, I know, Banker, you've been kind of using your camera since you were a little kid and capturing your life in general, including your family. Was there a moment when you decided that this kind of family crisis was worthy of a film?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Cheryl, hearing you talk about kind of your peers and that kind of creative feedback and how that played into it. But so I always had a really playful relationship with my mom. I had done like earlier performance works that she was a collaborator with, and she, before her diagnosis in her kind of late 50s, had started to just behave in strange ways. She retired really early, and it confused her friends and family. And she was so young, no one was thinking dementia. But she had announced that she was going to write this book about her mother, so my grandmother, Marion. And so in a way, like, I had even like a couple of years into this, like, I'm going to help mom because it makes her feel better and it makes me feel better, her book project. And actually, I had just met Anna, and I had been working on another film project for a while and was getting ready to go to a pitching forum. And I showed Anna some of that work. And I mean, in some ways, that work wound up becoming this survivors film, the Ebola film, with this long-term collaboration with this group in West Africa. And before I left, I also was like, and I kind of have this footage that I wanted to show you. And, I've been working on this project with my mom, but I think I was terrified that it could become public, because that isn't really why I started doing it. But I really remember, I'm saying this too, because I want Anna to kind of like participate in these like earliest, the memories of how this happened. But I was really struck by how she reacted to these really early kind of interactions I was having with my mom that were really just like recorded conversations that I didn't think. And of course, this was, 2 years into that project and about a couple months after her official diagnosis. So everything kind of had taken on this new meaning because she'd been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, no, I feel like I was probably one of the first people that you showed that footage to, and Banker had taken this very intimate conversation where he's filming his mom and they're talking about his grandmother, her mother, and trying to put her memories on to paper before she loses them. And since she couldn't write, it was going through the form of recorded media, and Banker was just taking that when he got home and putting it to music and putting it with images, and it started to just become this really beautiful thing that I really encouraged him to share, and it ended up kind of each person he shared it with was like, wow, this is really interesting. It was funny at really that special
pitching forum. I was there completely for another reason. And then I feel like Anna's encouragement, it was just interesting. Like I've done work, but most of the time I include family members. It was not really as raw and intimate as, addressing something as, like a terminal illness, facing your mortality. I'd never really actually done that kind of first person work before. So it was really interesting.
It was just a window into a loving relationship between a parent and an adult parent and their aging parent. And you don't see that. Like, you don't see your friends having those like intimate moments, and you only have like your own family as a frame of reference. And I think to like see into someone else's is really enlightening and emotional. And so that was kind of the very earliest, and those little bits of footage are still in the very beginning of the film.
Yeah, I'm going to show a clip from the film, but I want to say, just kind of in response to that, is that when I watch Genius of Marion and when I look at Cheryl's works, I think of them as much as, I think they're beautiful family portraits. Before I think of them as Alzheimer's films. I really think this is a portrait of the White family that is just so inspiring. So I kind of want to be adopted. I'm going to play this quick, and then we'll come back and we'll watch. We're going to look at some photographs.
Hello, I am Pam White. I am the mother of 3 children. I will tell you a little bit about me. I grew up in a hotel. My father owned the hotel, and it was an unusual way to grow up, but it was a lovely way to grow up. I was an actress. I did modeling. I live for my family and my children. And one little glitch is that I have developed Alzheimer's. And initially I was quite distressed and upset about it. But it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really change anything. So I don't feel sad and I don't feel regret. I feel blessed that I have this wonderful family and a husband who is extraordinarily wonderful. I just feel like maybe the way my mother did before she was dying, it just was the way it was. And remembering, keeping, cherishing all the times I had with friends and family, and so it's all good. No regrets.
Unmuted. So beautiful. Oh.
It's extraordinarily beautiful. I mean, you know, and of course, when we watch the film, we know that your father is watching Pam however long ago, and since then, you know, she lost the ability to express herself in that clear of a way. So even that little bit is a passage of time. I think that's a really powerful way to set that up.
We did this a lot, but she recorded that in a room by herself. So even my own like viewing of that, although it was just like a couple hours later, I don't think my dad watched that for a couple of years. She was not talking like that in person. I think there was so much kind of like complicated emotions and shame and confusion, like actual dementia related confusion, and then how the emotions kind of pile on top. That as much, and it was like I hadn't heard my mom speak like that for years, and it was just in a different room, and it was a really interesting insight into the disease process in a way, because she had incredible clarity, and then she would just kind of look to the side, and then you'd have these like 3 minutes of just silence where and when you're with someone, I think that kind of drifting in and out in different stages, I mean, that happened through the whole thing.
Let me ask you how you imagine that the process that you went through together and as a family, the three of you with, you know, the two of you and Pam, and then the family in general, how the process of the storytelling and the recording helped Pam or influenced her, or what did it, you know, did it help her come to terms with what was happening? I mean, do you have any sense of that?
Yeah, I mean, so interestingly, that clip too is like right around a time when she also, and this is alluded to, I would say, in the film, pretty well, it's pretty directly addressed, but she was having psychotic breaks and really intense kind of trouble coming to terms with what was happening, so much so that I think that was producing these kind of psychotic breaks and bouts of violence and things like that. And she really wanted to keep it secret, and yet at the same time, I think like I still like she's the type of mom that always wanted to support something that her son wanted to do. And so for all my art projects, she always wanted to do it. And there was this really interesting thing when we talked about making a film together, not just work on the book, where I feel like, and she was a therapist and a social worker her whole life. So life very much kind of dedicated to helping other people, where there was this weird synergy where like, if she did this, she knew that somehow this would eventually become, I don't think any of us knew what that meant, like become kind of more public, and that we would talk about this more. And I think the idea that other people that she never knew might learn something from this. And I think even more directly, all these people that were kind of struggling to figure out how to help our family would somehow have some access to it. And it was like this interesting coming out party. And it happened before the film was done, because like I'd have a trailer and we'd get a grant, and good friends that had never used the words Alzheimer's or dementia with her would wind up like calling the house and say, "Oh, congratulations, I heard that you and Banker just got a grant for this." Because everybody knew, but there was like no way to talk about it. And so
it was a positive way to talk about it. And
so that was like mid-process. And then I think it's just been this interesting, even still, like my mom passed 3 years ago now. And that was a couple, years after the film finished. So for me, I love being able to see her in these clips talk like that. But I also feel like that it is like this last, like, I don't know, like her work, like what it means to be a social worker, I think is so important. She was so really gifted at doing that. So I feel like when I get to do things like this, it's like this interesting extension of, what she did in her professional, well, not just professional life, because she was like that with her friends too.
That's interesting. I think I'm gonna start some slides here, and I think we're gonna kind of have a similar conversation about Cheryl's mom. Cheryl, I forgot your mom's name.
Carol.
Carol. Okay. Audience, please jump in here, chat in your questions or comments or reflections on this work. It's really rich and powerful. So please jump in and be part of this. I wish we could be in the room together, but your little messages will have to suffice for now. So I want to ask a little bit about process first, because I know you've done, in general, more carefully composed works, and some of these in the series are, but I think some of them were shot a little more quickly too. So you got this is a 4x4 that you have out here?
Oh no, that would be no. This is the big guns. This is an 8x10.
Okay.
So I think I started shooting 8x10 when I was in grad school, and I really thought it's clean. I like things that are very organized, and it was black and white, and I could process the film myself, and it was just very, and it was all the people that I studied under at Mass Art shot 8x10. So it was the thing to do. And I feel like I started that when I was quite young, early 20s, and I didn't look back. And then, of course, this project came, and if I had brought my camera out, it would have been, a month of Sundays. As fast as I feel like I am, it still would have taken a long time. And I think there's just been that lovely delay that some of us really appreciate about film. I don't think it quite works in this situation. So, like everybody else, and certainly like a lot of my students, I carry around an iPhone, and that's what a lot of these early images are.
This one here is an iPhone shot?
Yes.
It's amazing.
I know, right? I should say I'm, of course, sometimes we're blessed because we make the right choices, but oftentimes we go to the right place. And I have a backyard that just kind of opens up every time there's sun, and it's a magical place.
So I think one thing that oops, we have a duplicate there. We get such a strong sense of your mom's spirit through these photos, which I guess is the goal of portraiture. But you're in a unique situation because you're basically her partner. You guys are living together. You're her caretaker, and you're the storyteller. So all kind of wrapped up, and plus you're going through your own process of coming to terms and grieving. Can you talk a little bit about how that might impact the work and the choices you're making?
Oh yeah, I think that for the most part, my mother, and because I think we did this together, my mother and I lost my father. The family was in a car accident the day after Christmas, and he did not survive. And I was 14 and she was all of 37. He was 39. But we lived in a beautiful university community, which I think I credit her and a lot of therapy with coming to understand how quickly we sort of understood that this loss was very communal, right? So it was okay to be a mess at school and to be crying at sports events, or to just not be able to hold it together, because I didn't feel like it was something that I was experiencing alone. And I think that it's huge. I don't quite know how that would come to be, but it was really remarkable thing. So by 15 or 16, I at least felt like, okay, you don't die alone, really. You are part of this larger community. And I think my mother was great at that. So, but nonetheless, I feel like I understood a lot about death, and I could make pictures that I thought played around with that, because I felt pretty safe about that until, of course, it was my mother. And hence, I think the sadness and the depression and really not being able to make the pictures. But of course, I think the one thing that's great about dementia is that she there is no future and there's no past. So there is no sadness. If I spent time with an aunt who's quite sick, there is the elephant in the room. I have to say, I might not see you again. And I understand that we have to talk about the love and we have to talk about the loss. And my mother would be happy to talk about the love, but there is no sense of loss. Like when I would start to cry, she would comfort me sort of in the way that you might comfort a small dog. Like it's okay. But she had no realization as to why I was falling apart.
Amazing. So you capture really beautifully and the relationship with nature. I mean, it partly to do, as you said, with your yard. It seems like a lot happens there connected to the natural world. But there's mortality, and it's called Calling the Birds Home. Can you talk a little bit about these photos, her work, and that title?
Yeah, my mother was widowed pretty early, and she worked at the university, in the administration. But she was an active artist. She painted when I was growing up. She was always taking art classes. Very prolific oil painter. And then mid-career, she decided that she really wanted to carve birds, which I remember thinking was like kind of odd. And who knows if that's part of, I think we look back and we try to understand when those changes took place. But that was probably not part of it. But anyway, she threw herself into it, and within a few years became pretty proficient at that. So she was carving these beautiful birds out of big chunks of wood. She found a group of people that she could carve with. So she had a little art posse that a community that she worked with, which of course we've already discussed how hugely important that is. So I think my college and post-college years were my mother, very deliberately carving, or she'd go for a walk and she'd find a dead bird and bring it back and dry it out, or she was always buying books and looking at birds, and of course was, very knew a great deal about them when I was a child as well. So she was a very accomplished artist. But of course, that was the other part that started to go, is she would just, be kind of painting, almost paint by number over some of her beautiful pieces. So we'd be like, thinking, well, they are yours, but we should probably save some of them. And so for me, just trying to understand a bit about how she was watching her world kind of come to a close down. And I think almost any family member or friends can relate to this idea where you just feel like I'm working like crazy, and I'm so grateful for the universities and the colleges and now Phillips Exeter that have supported me, because I need a job, and I have children that I'm supporting, and I have a life and an art, and I have this mother, and I'm doing everything I can. And there are just some days where I just think, I don't know how this is going to come together. And it was really that sense of almost like calling out to the universe, like, if you're looking over here, we could use some help, because we're doing all we can together, and it's sometimes pretty hard.
Has the process of making these photographs helped?
Oh yes, yes, yes. And I think I almost feel like on a funny level, they almost formulaically could help with anybody. Like I think two people could sit together and knit and probably accomplish a lot of the beauty that happened between my mother and I. It happened to be my photographs and her birds and her, sort of beautiful personality. But I think you could probably, I mean, it's a weird crossover where art in this situation almost becomes a bit of therapy certainly for me. And I suspect if she seemed to so perk up about it, I think it was somewhat helpful and pleasant, right? I mean, I think she really enjoyed having her picture made.
What have you learned about her spirit, or or the human spirit in general as you've gone about this? Because obviously, your relationship with her changes entirely, but maybe in some sense doesn't change at all. I mean, have you taken anything away?
I mean, I guess I want to say too that her super happy, like, oh my God, things are great, it is her nature. But I also want to, sort of qualify that I understand from doctors that study this, that might also be just part of the disease as well. But nonetheless, to have somebody who is by your side, as you had mentioned too, that idea that your mother supports what you're doing. And she always did. And, in my previous, in our lives prior to this. So that was the same. And I think I could just kind of, I guess the worry is that we're kind of taking advantage of that kindness. And so I was always trying to be, careful about that. But nonetheless, when, it's like when you're with a good friend, like you just know that they get you and you get them and you're having fun together. And that's what it would be like when I would take the camera out, which is not to say that there weren't moments like that if we were reading poetry or somebody brought over, an amazing pie or something. But for us, this was the thing.
Mm. And the sense of how close, which comes through in Genius of Marion so strongly, the sense of how close you guys all, the two of you are, is so strong in these photographs, even when you're not visible in them. I mean, you guys, anyone can talk about that. I mean, Banker and Anna, you might want to join in and this process. I think the process in general, but maybe particularly when you're making images or telling a story together, the process seems to knit people together in some way.
Mm-hmm. Cheryl, I read some of your words too, and I don't remember exactly how it was beautifully stated, but you talked about the time that you spend not talking together and just kind of sharing in space, and it's just interesting. Looking at your pictures now just reminds me a lot of the time that I spent with my mom, kind of after how all of you maybe just saw them if you've recently watched the movie. But as she became less verbal, and I wasn't continuing with the film per se, but like all of those, our kind of creative relationship and the types of things that we did together. I don't know. It was like, I think that because I would see friends, some who visited often and some who just couldn't really keep up with how her changes. I think after she passed, a lot of those friends have kind of come back. But as a child that I think was able to be present, it was really beautiful time. Like I really actually have wonderful memories of being with my mom because I was no longer trying to like wrap my head around how she was changing. And it isn't that that's not a part of the grieving process. It's just one of the most beautiful parts of it when you can just kind of like be in this space with someone. And it was a big part, I think, of what I remember as being so special with like, making art together with someone, kind of sharing time together with someone.
I try to think of how that feeling can work with people who are cognizant of their death. And I wonder how much of, when we sit with somebody and speaking for myself, I guess I always feel like I want to know, but I also feel like I need to politely ask, how are they doing? How are they coping with their pending death or their pain or this terrible sadness? And of course we would have those conversations, but my mother would be like, I don't know. So once you're relieved of that, as the person who's having the other half of the conversation, it is mind-boggling that we're then both able to go forward without having that I mean, it's just not a free fall of sadness. And yet the only thing that seems to have changed is that one person of that two-part conversation just basically said, no, I'm not going to talk about it, because they couldn't, but really, maybe that is a solution to some of this, is you just choose not to discuss it. Whether or not find out the things that you can talk about, I don't know, but it is, yeah.
One of the things I think that happens in both of the bodies, the film and the body of work, is that our sense of time becomes much more acute as viewers, because we understand that it's just powerfully, painfully obvious that the story that's being told has a finite end. I mean, every story does, but these stories particularly. These are stories of deep love, of family connection, and we know that the end is coming. And the photo in this little, I kind of arranged these by themes. These next batch of photos really have a especially strong sense of a temporal sense, I think, of time passing, of the end of things. Maybe you guys can talk. I guess my question, that's a long rambling statement, but the question might be, what did you learn about mortality, or what have you learned and about the passage of time as you went about telling these stories?
I'm going to let you jump in. I think I'm still reeling.
Do you want to?
Well, I think it takes maybe, knowing that you're going to lose someone you love, to appreciate just like sitting in a room in total silence, and it really brings you into the present, knowing that there's a palpable end. And of course, in some way we all know that we're mortal, but when you really feel that day could be the last day, and even if it's just before there's another change that makes that kind of day impossible, time does stretch out. And I don't know how to make that happen in everyday life, but it happens in those situations, and then trying to capture that and remember it and share it is a interesting process.
Mm-hmm. And then
I think sometimes that I'm not even close to thinking about what I could possibly do if I was actually making film, but I think with photography, even an iPhone, but certainly with a film, you are so involved, and you're looking, and you can only do that one thing. I can't be doing advanced math or be thinking about what's going to happen in 10 minutes. It really requires, or I want it to require everything. And that person, I think in many ways, I think senses that and gives you back that whole. So without that, I think that's sometimes the glue that maybe all three of us are sharing. My husband, he does stuff for work that I think is very complicated and stressful, and he sails, and often in terribly, I think he just loves storms. A lot of my family, and I just find this to be so stressful, to be on a boat and for there to be wind, and it just, oh my God, I want to get off. And they just love it. I think and when I finally was trying to understand that, I think the analogy was that you could be nowhere else. You could only focus on the sail and the boat and getting through that. And that there was no future, that you weren't, they didn't believe you were going to capsize, and you were going to look at your history, but it was only in that moment. And I know that's such a cliche, but I don't feel like I live very much in the moment. And this project really forced me to. And because of the subject.
Yeah.
There's also a certain kind of gift that you as storytellers bring forward to be able to capture those moments, because, I think the gift of your body of work and the film are that I feel that. and I'm there with your mother, and I become part of the White family for a little bit. And I feel that sense of loss, and I feel the preciousness of the moments. This moment that we're looking at here is such a precious moment. I mean, it's, and the candles are going to go out, and that moment will end. It's
The sun's going to go down. Yeah. Mm.
You did make one little film.
Yes.
I don't know if it's going to play in this format. It doesn't look like it is. I really love this. You can describe what happens in this.
My mother is I would say for her Zen, it is the horse. We were very lucky to have I rode growing up. My daughters have horses, and we have an old horse that's boarded here, that does not belong to us. But for this past year, we're kind of her family, and so my mother comes down and does the stalls with me, and she of course is just very fastidious. And but there are moments too that the horse is very old and my mother's very old, and it's hard for me not to think like maybe they're both going to go together. I mean, I have had moments like that, but it's also that they just do seem to, the horse will knock her over, kind of just bang into her. And she also will just walk up and kind of embrace the horse. It's magical things happen in the yard and in the barn. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Or maybe around horses. This is the very first picture that I took of my mother for Joni. And I mean, she just seems like she is like, okay, here we go.
Can I say she has a little bit of a raptor to her.
Right? And that's what I wrote about. I just felt like, wow, she's looking more and more bird-like. Her eyes are so blue. And there are moments when I would just feel like she didn't even see me. Like she was just kind of like hell-bent on something else. Yeah, it's crazy. And it's almost like a small child. Like I think that your children can be so, young children are so beautiful. And there's a part of my mother that has just become more and more beautiful. I mean, my mother is not what I come from her. We are not beautiful women in that sense. We sort of get things done and here we are visually. But I would say there's aspects of her that, maybe to help ingratiate the people around her, she looks more and more beautiful every day.
How old is your mother in these pictures?
So she will be. I doubt she's going to make it. She's kind of in a bad state right now, but she will be 82 on November 5th. So this was 2 years ago. And, you can see that sort of light fading out. Like there's less cognitive recognition. It's in our eyes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I should ask, I find this always perplexing for this body of work for me. So as someone who did not necessarily, I feel like with projects, we do a lot of research and we really love what we're doing. And it's like, I read books, stacks and stacks of books about things. And it's just like, this is full on. And this project was really sort of adopted and kind of something I obviously did to pass the time for a whole variety of reasons. So when I'm making the pictures, I feel like I understand it for one reason, and the body work is still going on. She's still alive, thankfully. So I don't think there's been enough time to kind of see where that, to see what the work might look like in a year or two after her death. But I have come to really discover that when it is out in the world and seen or appears anywhere, and people write me, is that the body of work seems to really work for other people for reasons that I think it is completely different than me. And I wondered if I would suspect your film does the same thing. Mm-hmm. And it's such an odd disconnect. And I know we could say that about all our work. Like, obviously, if you're making a picture about one body of work, somebody's going to experience it in a different way, and we want the world to be open but this just feels like night and day. People will tell me their stories, and they're similar stories, but I just it's such an odd. I haven't quite figured out. The closest I've come to it is I had this great conversation with a gallerist in March, and I think I was crying. It was one of those conversations where she was sort of cutting through everything. And I said, okay, so not able to articulate this well, but I think what the closest I can come to is that I've been making these pictures, and it's as though I'm making pictures about sex, and I'm a virgin. I'm 13-year-old old, and I have no experience, and yet here I am. And I think sometimes that's how I feel. This work is it's a conversation between my mother and I, and then it goes out in the world in a way that I don't think I understand. And I imagine film does that even more so.
I mean, I must say that this culture doesn't train us to deal with end of life issues at all.
That's true. Very
And
much so.
you as artists are daring to do it. You're taking the place of the social structures that are absent for us. And so we have to, we get to this certain age and we have to learn to do it. And your work helps us, both of you, all of your work, it helps us to do that. So
I think just putting, I mean, it's hard to know how, I mean, you could research all types of things kind of like circling the thing that you're doing, but actually you can't research the thing that you're doing because you're living it and it's unfolding and you're kind of discovering your own. I mean, the thing that I found interesting too, like what you're saying, is people, when I would show, like the conversations I would have at a film festival about my film weren't about the subject of my film. It was just like I'd opened up this interesting, like emotional space where people felt like they could approach me and talk to me about what was happening in their life. And I found that really fascinating. And I'd actually get to know people. I like even close friends of mine. I had a very close friend who cared for his father who had advanced Parkinson's through his high school years. I had no idea that that was true. And somehow like this film came out and that became like a part of our friendship. And then of course there's all kinds of other things like that that happen with people you never met before. I found that really interesting. And I don't know if maybe there's something about doing it before you, like the way you would like, and it's like I said, I'd never made a first person type film. We're kind of in the process of another one, but we'd never done this before. And so it was very interesting the way that people reacted to it. And so the types of conversations I would have surrounding the work felt really different than other types of work that we'd done before.
I'm going to say that you guys are courageous for doing this because it makes you kind of face these crises head on. And I'm going to play a clip and I'm going to ask you about it because I just imagine that this was a tough thing to film. Let's try this last one. You think what that is? That's okay. That's okay. And can you tell me what year it is?
This is the one that makes me mad because it's something I should know immediately.
That's tough, yeah. I know.
I just don't think about it.
Yeah, I know. It's not something people think about a lot. Can you come up with it, or it's escaping you at this point?
Tell me again.
What year is it?
19 something.
Okay. And do you feel as though you have enough help at home?
It's probably going to need to change.
Would you like to speak to one of the social workers about that? Just in terms of just getting somebody, I mean, insurance can cover some of these things, just getting somebody in your house to help clean and help do the dishes and take care of, sort of routine things around the house. Would that help?
I wouldn't want to have that.
You wouldn't want to have that, even if your insurance paid for it?
Well, I think a lot of it is because Ed is so helpful.
Of course.
So I don't.
Well, there are just some things I'm not that good at. I don't know how to put your makeup on.
You're really good at it.
Yeah, that's what you say. I do dress you, but I'm not that good at it. The showers and the baths and all that stuff is. You could really get better help than me, but that's the big issue.
That I think the problem is that it's kind of like my, how do you say it? Pride.
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense. You know, it's where we want to do something that's going to just make life easier for both of you, and not, you know, so just give you more time to have fun and play tennis and go to singing lessons. But it's not something we have to do right now. Okay? All right.
So I've seen that I think 6 or 7 times, and I've cried 6 or 7 times. And I just wonder how you did it. You know, how did you do it? I mean, how did you sit there with a steady camera? You know, because I think it was probably, I imagine it was a shock to you and your dad.
Yeah.
You didn't know the word for bench, that she didn't know the word for canoe, that she didn't know what year it was. I mean, it's because she carries herself with, you know, such dignity, you know.
And
anyway.
then you come up with pride, and not all those other kind of meaningless things. I'd gone to a couple neurology department, maybe 2 appointments before that. One, but no, both of that my father, I think, where we, and I thought it would be really interesting to film it, because I was, like you said, floored the first time I saw that process, because, you know, it's designed to give them a sense of exactly where she's at, and I had no idea the level of kind of disconnect. Of course, you see someone struggle to find their words, but when you know there's a test that's designed to track progress, it floored me the first time I saw it, and I thought it would be kind of really fascinating to be able to show that process. The thing that I think is so fascinating about the scene, just watching it now too, is the sense of how these triangular conversations happen, where sometimes they treat my mother like she's present in the room. And then the doctor, and I loved him, I thought he was great actually, would try and kind of have this conversation where he would then look to my father to try and kind of accomplish learning about exactly what this looks like when he's not around, but it almost like treats her like she's not in the room anymore. And then, you know, my mom, I think, was still emotionally aware and present enough that must be really like, it's just so, that type of thing, I think, just happens over and over and over again. And although I'm saying I actually love the doctor and thought he did a good job of it, it's so hard. And there's a lot of code in there too, where like my mom actually was needing, I would say, more advanced, not necessarily nursing care, but she, you know, she couldn't go to the bathroom. Anna actually, because she was the only other woman in the house, did a lot of my mom's personal care. And we were there half the year. And
for 3 years.
And so it's interesting, even as close as my parents were, they just never had to talk about those things. And that was becoming that type of, it's interesting too, the way a neurologist is. I thought, again, he was good at this, is like, how do you actually affect those type of changes in the household? Not just maybe recommendations on, you know, whatever, you know, taking Aricept and other types of things might be, but actually affecting the dynamics of how a family operates.
What happens to you in those moments? I mean, are you the son? Are you the filmmaker? I mean, how do you navigate that? And I mean, this
is an interesting scene, because I can default. I love shooting kind of verite film, and I think to do that well, you kind of disappear. but not so much so that it's awkward. So I'm a present family member who the doctor knows, because I don't know if it would work if I was like the son who was a filmmaker who hadn't kind of like been there, not because we couldn't get the release, but actually just to get real human interaction. So I think you've got to be there and kind of not there at the same time. But it is important that I feel like you're felt as like a social part of the room.
Yeah, I'm sure there was questions that, you know, directed towards you while you were filming that just aren't in the sequence. You know, it's we're all in. The funny thing about filming something like this is a tiny room, and we're all just kind of Banker and I are crouched in the corner filming. But then, you know, some
and it's not
come up.
It's not like a 8x10. I use quite a small camera, which I think helps in those weird moments where the awareness that you're being filmed is not maybe helpful to get something that feels very genuine and real.
Yeah, Cheryl, I saw you nodding. When
So much of that was just incredible, right? I mean, just I feel like I've been there.
Your position. I mean, how do you position yourself when you're making a photograph of your mom? How do the artist and the daughter combine? Do they combine in interesting ways? Do they in ways that deepen your sense of creativity, that deepen your sense of family? I mean, what's the interaction there?
Well, I think the one thing to remember too is that you know, with the film, you feel that you bring the audience right there, and we're in this doctor's appointment, but we could be at the market the next time. I mean, it is we're coming along with her, and I feel like I'm very lucky in that I would say, like, I've seen this field and I know that this is happening. Let's go there, and we would go together and go. You know, it's in some ways every photograph is a still life. You know, we're setting it up and waiting for the light and waiting for the trees and making it all beautiful for me. And it isn't that, you know, no one's in the room kind of going like, God, it's taking forever. Wow, you're shooting a lot of film, or wow, I think you missed the big one. The sun just went down. Whereas with what you guys are doing, it is you know, maybe also having sat through those appointments with my mother. I don't think there was any stone unturned, right? I mean, and also just to, I think the beauty of this is that she, and my mother would too, sort of sometimes open up and say these things that are just, wow. I mean, that's all that matters, is that she was able to sort of convey this very deep emotion. Do we really care what day of the week it is? I mean, we all know that now. None of us know what day of the week it is. We don't care. So it is interesting how much of that stuff just falls away, and maybe how much I, you know, just clung to it. Like, no, I need to have a job and I need to shoot this film and it has to be a certain way. And now it's like, whatever, you know, it's all fine.
And sometimes those moments that seem so poignant when you isolate them or contextualize them are you don't feel them the same way in the moment, because there are so many other things going on. Like maybe you're wondering if there's like sound interference, or like you could, so much of life you're just missing all the time because you can't absorb everything. And then, you know, you look at this back when we go back to San Francisco, and we have, you know, we're thousands of miles away, and all of a sudden it's like heart-wrenching and emotional and like, oh my God. And in the moment you're sort of like, wow, that was interesting. But it's also very, like, all of these things are happening all the time. So the extraordinary moments are normal, or you just can't feel them because it's all too much, too fast. And then you just have to like slowly take your time and pick them apart, and they become something.
That's so interesting, because you've each created a record of your family that you revisit after the initial recording of it, that probably has different resonances as you move through the process. I mean, that's what you did for your dad when you played that clip. And yes, well, I think we're winding, kind of getting towards a wind down moment. We could talk all night. I want to say just a couple things. Your work, all of your work, it deepens our understanding of what it means to be human. And I think that's the greatest gift artists can give. And so I really appreciate you guys being here tonight and all the work you've done. Cheryl, I'm going to ask you to say a goodbye because I'm going to let Anna set up a little surprise that we have as a goodbye film that we can watch after we say goodbye, which is a little process film and scene from Banker and Anna's next film. So, which is really, it resonates with the things we're talking about tonight.
So maybe I can ask quickly, because of course, as my project is coming to an end one day soon, how did you foresee the next project? Like, how did you dig out of that? And maybe that's the way to say goodbye. Thank you so much. I had so much.
So it was really great to become acquainted with your work and share this time with you. Thanks for bringing us together, Jason.
Thank
It's a pleasure.
And yeah, I mean, I could just quickly answer that before you go, which is that we were doing this project with Banker's mom, and I saw how what a special space making the film was opening up. And my friend Yo, who is 50 years older than me, was in her late 80s, and I was like, all right, I want to do this with Yo. And we started filming with her, and she, we ended up kind of making this film in the last year of her life. And it's really recording the time we spent together and the stories of her life. And we've been making the film for, we started the film 8 years ago when The Genius of Marion was still being made. And, she passed in 2013. So the film has become about grief and processing loss, and then having this amazing material to dig through, looking for the things that you want more when someone's gone. And so part of making this film is finding that in what we shot with her and trying to make sense out of it.
And she interesting that you said in some ways, like, our moms had dementia, and in a way they didn't. As they neared those final stages, there wasn't this acute awareness that it was happening. And Yo had congestive heart failure. And so interestingly was very present.
Totally sharp.
And so although there are similarities, it's a really different woman kind of navigating the path in a different way. And it's been harder to make. I mean, she passed. It's interesting, like the amount of time that's passed since that. And now us, we're kind of in the final stages of the project now, but it's been a while.
You have made 2 other features and 2 kids in the meantime.
That's true.
Yeah.
So yes, you have not been idle. Thank you all, and stay safe. I really appreciate the work you do. I'm going to put up. Well, you guys can find it. I'm going to put up in the chat Cheryl's website and a link to Genius of Marion. You guys already have an opportunity to see it. The offer to support this program is still up. You can click on that and donate to the CCA if you like. Thank you for being here, everybody. This is a teaser. Is this the first time anyone has seen this? Is this the world premiere of the?
This one is recently put together, and it's called Heaven Through the Back Door.
Heaven Through the Back Door. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Tini was funny. Tini said, Mom, where would you like to die? I said, Tini, shit, why do you ask me that? Where would I like to die? I said, I don't know. In a bed, in my sleep. And he said, no, but I mean at home, in a nursing home, in a hospital. I said at home. Ça va, ça va. Je suis en train de me gratter. Et on m'a donné des liquides. Et le docteur qui va me mettre la caméra, il va me donner quelque chose qui ne va pas beaucoup m'apercevoir. J'espère. I left my body, I lived in the white light. He said, well, he said, you went to heaven through the back door. I disintegrated in a little particle in the air. That's why I kind of believe that's where we end up. Because nothing gets lost, you know. You die, but where are you going? Something is staying.